There's a specific type of person who never argues back, never defends themselves, never wastes energy proving they're right. And here's what's crazy. These people run boardrooms, shape elections, and accumulate insane amounts of power while everyone else burns out fighting meaningless battles. This isn't weakness. It's warfare. Why explaining yourself makes you controllable. Here's what nobody tells you about power. The moment you start explaining yourself, you've already lost. Every justification, every defense, Let me clarify what I meant. It's all data. And people who understand the game are collecting that data to figure out exactly how to manipulate you later. Think about it. When someone attacks you and you immediately jump to defend yourself, what are you really doing? You're showing them your weak spots. You're revealing what matters to you, what triggers you, what makes you lose your composure. You're basically handing them a manual on how to destroy you. There's a fascinating story from the early days of the CIA that most people don't know. During the Cold War, they had this technique for identifying foreign operatives. They didn't look for obvious mistakes or accents. They watched for reaction patterns. The amateurs would get defensive when certain topics came up. They'd over-explain, provide too many details, try too hard to seem normal. The real pros? Stone cold. They'd redirect, laugh it off, or just stay eerily calm. Impossible to read, impossible to trap. Fast forward to today. Social media is psychological warfare at scale. Every day, someone's trying to bait you into a fight. Cancel you, you look stupid. And most people take the bait. They write essay-length responses, make video rebuttals, rally their followers. Result? They become entertainment. They lose credibility with every explosion. But what about those public figures who get absolutely demolished online and just keep posting their regular content like nothing happened? That's not obliviousness. That's mastery. They understand that attention is currency, and giving your attacker attention is literally paying them. So they do something genius. They act like the attack doesn't exist. And guess what happens? The attack loses momentum, dies of starvation. The Stoics figured this out 2,000 years ago. Epictetus taught that you don't control what others think of you. So trying to control it is insanity. But this wasn't just philosophy. It was survival strategy. In ancient Rome, showing weakness could get you killed. So they trained their minds to be unreactive. Not because they didn't feel emotions, but because they refused to let emotions control their strategy. Here's the brutal truth. Every time you defend yourself, you're training people on exactly how to hurt you. Next time, stop giving away the playbook. What if your need to be understood is the very thing keeping you powerless? How? Never defending creates automatic authority. Want to know something that'll mess with your head? We live in a culture that's obsessed with making you explain yourself, justify your decision, defend your position, prove you're not guilty. And most people comply. They spend their entire lives performing for an audience that doesn't even matter. Now look at who actually runs things. Billionaire CEOs, world leaders, masters in any field. How often do they justify their decisions? Almost never. They decide, execute, and move forward. If someone questions them, either silence or an answer so brief, it kills the conversation. Because I said so, period. There's this fascinating theory that circulates in certain power circles. Some people believe the education system is deliberately designed to train you to always justify your answers. Thousands of essays, oral presentations, showing your work on math problems. Everything requires explanation. The result? A generation that literally can't make a decision without external validation. Interesting, right? Meanwhile, people who learn early to trust their own judgment without needing applause, they lead, they dominate, they control, because they understand that over-explaining dilutes power. Every extra word is an opening for challenge, for debate, for someone to poke holes. Consider Elon Musk. How many times does he come out with detailed justifications for controversial Tesla or SpaceX decisions? Rarely. He announces, executes, and lets results speak. People complain, predict failure, write think pieces about how he's wrong. Then the rockets land themselves. Why does this work? Because absence of justification creates an aura of inevitability. If even the creator doesn't feel the need to defend it, must be so obvious it doesn't need defense. Power law number 4 says it perfectly. Always say less than necessary. Powerful people impress and intimidate by saying less. The more you talk to explain yourself, the more common you appear. The more silent and mysterious, the more powerful. Why? Because humans fill voids with their own projections, usually elevating you to a level you didn't even claim. Here's another layer. When you don't defend yourself, you force your attacker to work harder. They need to create new accusations, new strategies, burn more energy. Meanwhile, you're focused on actual objectives. They're shadow boxing. You're building empires. In the corporate world, employees who justify every mistake are seen as insecure. Leaders who acknowledge errors without drama and move on, respected. But what happens when silence gets mistaken for guilt? Why? Your defenses make you predictable and weak. Here's where it gets dangerous. Every single time you defend yourself, you're revealing your algorithm. You're showing people exactly which buttons to push, which lies to tell, which accusations to make. You become predictable, and predictable people get destroyed. Let me tell you something most people never learn. During World War II, intelligence agencies studied interrogation techniques extensively. They discovered something counterintuitive. Subjects who defended themselves aggressively were easier to break than subjects who stayed calm and said nothing. Why? Because defense requires mental energy. It requires you to track your story, manage your emotions, anticipate attacks. Silence requires nothing. It's energetically superior. Apply this to modern life. You're in a meeting and someone questions your competence. Most people immediately launch into defensive mode, listing achievements, explaining past successes, getting visibly annoyed. What does this communicate? Insecurity, need for approval, weakness. But the person who just looks at them, maybe smiles slightly, and says, "Okay," or simply continues with their presentation, that person just demonstrated supreme confidence. They didn't even acknowledge the attack was worth addressing. And everyone in that room noticed. The Stoics practiced this daily. Marcus Aurelius, literally the emperor of Rome, wrote in his journal about how the best revenge against someone who wrongs you is to not become like them. But this wasn't soft philosophy. This was military strategy. An emperor surrounded by conspiracies couldn't afford emotional reactions. Every outburst would be weaponized. So he mastered something incredibly difficult: the power of strategic non-reaction. Here's the thing that'll blow your mind. When you never explain yourself, people start creating positive narratives about you automatically. They're confident. They know what they're doing. That person has real authority, all because you didn't give them ammunition for the opposite. You let the void do the work. There's a rule from Ensis that most people don't know. Never give up information voluntarily. In interrogations, the silent agent always learns more than the talkative one. Because humans are terrified of voids. When you don't fill the space with defenses and explanations, the other person starts filling it themselves. And that's when they reveal intentions, insecurities, strategies. If this is making sense, drop the word power in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe. Tell me, when was the last time you lost a battle simply because you couldn't stay quiet? But there's a deadly trap here that could ruin everything. How to know if you're silent from power or silent from fear. Now, we get to the part that separates people who actually understand this from people who'll get crushed trying to apply it wrong. Because there's a massive difference between strategic silence and just letting people walk all over you. Confusing the two will destroy your life. Coward silence comes from fear. You don't react because you're terrified of confrontation, of being seen, of standing out. You swallow disrespect daily, accumulate resentment, and poison yourself from the inside. This silence isn't power, it's slow suicide. Strategic silence comes from abundance. You don't react because you have enough self-knowledge to recognize that certain battles don't deserve your energy. You choose your wars. You know your mental peace is worth more than proving a point to someone who doesn't even matter. This silence builds empires. How do you know which one you're practicing? Simple internal question. After staying quiet, do you feel at peace or do you feel crushed? Peace is power. Crushed is cowardice in disguise. There's a classic case studied in psychology of interrogation. During enhanced questioning techniques, some subjects would use silence as a weapon even while being tortured. They turned the psychological game around. Even captured, they controlled the mental environment. That's mastery. Apply this to today. If your boss humiliates you in a meeting and you stay quiet because you're calculating the best moment to leave and start your own company, strategic silence. If you stay quiet because you think you deserve to be humiliated, cowardice, that'll eat you alive. The Stoics had a daily practice. They separated what was under their control from what wasn't. Other people's opinions? Not under control. Your reaction to their opinions? Totally under control. So they trained the muscle of simply not caring. Not from arrogance, but from wisdom. Look at the paradox. The less you defend yourself, the more the right people respect you. But the wrong people will think you're weak. And that's perfectly fine. Because you don't need respect from people who don't understand the game. You only need respect from people who also play at high levels. In the end, people who never defend themselves control everything. Because they understood the most uncomfortable truth about power. It's not about winning arguments. It's about winning in silence, behind the scenes, in decisions nobody sees. While others scream in the arena, they build in the underground. And when they finally emerge, they've already conquered everything. If this video shifted your perspective, share it with someone who needs to learn this. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, comment strategic if you understood the difference. Tell me, are you practicing silence from power or silence from fear?